What's going on, F1's fans? My name is Alex. That's Eileen, and you're watching It's Lights Out F1. And today we're talking Sao Paulo GP. Used to be called the Brazilian GP, which was much easier for someone like me to say. So, we're here. This weekend was crazy. Intense.
We're like witnessing a whole nother level.
Yeah.
This year. Yeah.
So I'm going to agree with Lando because I'm a fan of Lando. And, you know, there's a different league some people are in, and man, Lewis proved it. So, let's just get into the weekend. Let's talk about it. We can talk about practice because practice and qualifying were on Friday. We also had a little bit of practice, and we had the sprint on Saturday, and we had the good old race today. And we're usually doing this about an hour or two after the race to kind of get this on YouTube as fast as possible. And since we're talking about that, I want to say you should like, subscribe, dislike, whatever it is. You can comment. I just want to talk F1 regardless if we're right, wrong, whatever. So that's what we kind of like here. So let's get into this weekend because this weekend was wild, crazy. This whole race leading up to I was at the edge. I mean, I didn't.
Yeah, I actually was too. I normally am lounging. I'm like comfortable.
Yeah.
But I was sitting on the edge of my seat the whole time. So, and we watched the sprint race a few times because it was just so exciting to watch. So, a lot to unpack.
Yeah.
A lot. Not on the track, off the track too.
Oh,
so
everything.
It was a busy weekend.
Yeah. So this might be a little longer than usual. We'll see how it goes. So leading up to the weekend, you would have thought it would have been a Red Bull track. And again.
Yeah. No, 100%.
Because it has a little bit of elevation, so there was talk about that.
Max won in 2019 here,
which was the last time they were there. So
yes.
there was definitely showings of it being a Red Bull track. Right away, practice one. Lewis is
getting a new ice. Okay, like
he did.
We knew that during practice one. So it was confirmed at the beginning of practice one.
It was. So that practice one showed us about 4 tenths. 3 tenths, 3.5, a little over 3.5 tenths difference.
Well, it was interesting, though, watching practice one because he didn't get to the top of the charts until pretty close to the end of practice because he was having, like, balance issues. He wasn't really happy with the car in practice one, and he just kept the entire session on the radio. Something wrong. The front wing's moving too much. The front wing was the issue. Later in the weekend, come to find out the rear wing was the issue. But we'll get to that in a second.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. So kind of as expected, I feel like when anybody takes a new engine, I mean, they're going to be at the top of the charts. But definitely Mercedes with their straight line speed, it was on another level. Him finishing 4 tenths above Max is like unheard of.
Yeah, so it was kind of crazy. So I heard that it was a good overtaking track. That's why they wanted to do the sprint here. I heard watching some other people talk on YouTube that it was not such a great overtaking track. Well, I mean,
I think it was.
I think it was too. I think we could notice it right away how fast there was going to be a difference between some of these guys.
There was a lot. I mean, once we get to the race, but oh my God, there was so much overtaking. Yeah. That's what made this weekend like amazing. So
it was crazy. So coming out of practice one, other than we saw that Mercedes is much faster, it wasn't going to probably be a Red Bull track anymore. It could possibly be something different.
The only other thing we really saw was your team, McLaren, didn't do so well in practice one.
You're right. That's
which was unusual. I
kind of forgot about that.
Ricardo was like right inside the top 10, and then Norris was having a tough day. So.
So with a lot of things that we had going on, I didn't get a really good chance to kind of see what their deal was with why they weren't there. But maybe overnight or going into the qualifying, so within a couple hours, they really had the car dialed in because as we come into qualifying, they did much better.
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely.
So qualifying was Friday, and that was only a couple hours later after the first practice. So they only had 1 hour of practice to really get the car dialed in going into this. And,
I know I've mentioned it before, but it's so tough watching qualifying on a Friday. This week, I was on an airplane, like trying to get internet. And when you fly, you can get live TV, but it wasn't working on the plane. So I was like ultra stressed out. Thank God we landed a little bit early, so I was able to catch in on time. and beat you to the punch. So
yeah, and I didn't even get to watch it live because I had to pick her up, and that's just it is what it is. But yeah, qualifying was crazy. We saw that Lewis had the fastest car again.
Yes.
By a decent amount, almost 4/10, over 4/10.
Yeah, I think it was about a half a second, which was crazy. So he was fast.
Yeah.
He was Ricky Bobby fast. I mean, they quoted that. They quoted Ricky Bobby a few times this weekend.
I was just gonna say there was multiple times when they talked about it for sure, and Ricky Bobby.
Yeah, super fast. So I mean, really, I think it was pretty standard. You got your Mercs, your Red Bulls. You got Gasly as always.
Yeah. So before the incident with Lewis here, he finished first. Verstappen right behind him. Bottas third, and then your typical Perez right where he is, always fifth.
No,
right there.
Yeah, Perez fourth.
Sorry.
Perez fourth. It's so hard because obviously what happened, but Perez fourth, and Gasly's Gasly's just P5. Just plug him in, just pencil him in. So just what an amazing season he's having. So
yeah, and the trend that we're seeing now later in the season here is Ferrari really has come up, and and you kind of mentioned to me throughout the week like, oh man, they're doing so good, but previously they used to always be kind of good, and that's why they're Ferrari.
I know,
and they figured out a couple things, and they're stepping their game up, and that's why now they're third, and they're constantly being third, and they're kind of staying in front of McLaren, but that's still a good fight down there. Yeah,
no, they did have a really good weekend. So they finished right behind Gasly together. Yeah. Carlos first, right? Carlos and then Leclerc. So, and then Norris and Ricciardo. So I'm like, we had obviously McLaren, we had Ferrari in the top 10. And then Alonso and Ocon squeaked in together. So that rounded out the top 10 for qualifying.
Sure did. Yeah. And, nothing else really other than
it was pretty standard. I feel like it was Lewis kept going faster and faster every lap, and then it was just like, everybody else behind kind of, and honestly the top four were so far ahead of everybody else, like in practice and in qualifying. So, we knew that the battle was going to be between them. So, yes.
But really the biggest controversy, the biggest topic of the whole weekend really starts right at the end of qualifying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Pulling on into
so Parc Fermé, which is the area that the cars have to go into as soon as they finish qualifying. And for a lot of people that don't know, that is an area that they have to leave the car, so they can't touch it. Their mechanics can't touch it, and it has to go get checked out and being watched by an FIA representative. Then once that is done, they can take their cars back to their garage, and they can do like-for-like repairs.
Mm-hmm. Can't change anything.
Can't change anything, correct. And we saw, and you're also, the drivers aren't allowed to touch other cars or touch their car really once they get out. And it's, sometimes you see other drivers previous years get out of the car and they kind of look at their other car. You've seen Lewis even this year get out of the car, look at his tires, look at the other tires of his teammate Bottas. I've seen it.
I think we're specifically talking about Inspector Seb.
Yeah.
We know that he wears many hats, and one of them is inspector. So
yeah. So, it has happened before, and, but what we saw on Friday after qualifying was Max get out of his car, walk to the back of his car, do something. It's kind of, the coverage is not right there, so you can't see exactly what he's doing. It's near the back wing, and then he walks over to Lewis's car and kind of does the same thing he did to his car. And you might know a little bit more than me because you are a little bit better on the gossip than I am.
I stayed low to the ground. I like to know the gossip.
Yeah. So, what was he doing? Did you find that out?
Well, he says it. So he was asked in, the post-sprint qualifying interview, like, what were you doing? Because what happened was, of course, the cars go and they get inspected. And so there was an issue with Lewis's DRS system, and basically the controversy is like, did Max cause it or whatever? But Max was like, I wasn't even looking at that. I was looking at it seems like their rear wing is flexing. And they obviously are like, their straight line speed is so fast. So he wanted to take a look at it. We don't know what the outcome of his investigation was. Maybe he'll share those details with us, but we don't know. But he did say what he was looking at, and he was like, I wasn't even looking at the DRS system. So
that kind of triggered a few things to happen. And
social media was up in arms.
I mean, it was all night.
Oh, my God, it was crazy. To be quite honest, I didn't notice Max at the end of qualifying even do it. I was just like, oh, okay. And then it was all over social media.
Yeah.
So it ignited that Lewis was under investigation for the DRS infringement. He was being called to the stewards, but then Max was being called to the stewards too for touching the rear wing. And the memes and the tweets and the amount of like funny stuff that came out of it from Max being like the Hulk from touching the wings that can withstand 300 mile an hour wind and all sorts of stuff during racing. Max going like this was going to cause it to break. So it was pretty funny. But yeah, so we had to wait overnight to even like find out what was happening. Like
with everybody,
the rumors of what's going to happen, throw them both to the back of the grid and let them duke it out, So there was a lot. But it was TikTok to the FIA, and they were making us wait for it. So
so even Saturday morning going into the practice, there was still not really everything that happened because they had to go for their meetings, and one was before the other.
And they didn't release the outcome right away.
No, they didn't.
So we were like, oh my God, just on Twitter, refresh, and social media over and over, like just waiting for an answer. Like, are we going to get it before practice? What's going to happen? And when practice started, it was like all eyes and all paparazzi cameras, everybody, I'm like paparazzi, but whatever we call them, were outside of Lewis's garage. And Lewis and Max weren't coming out. They were both still out of their cars. They both waited like 20 minutes into the session to actually go out. So it was like, are we going to find out before? Is something going to happen? The rumor was Lewis was getting disqualified, and social media was like up in arms, and there's a lot of blame going on.
There was.
Just craziness. So we moved into practice too. And a little bit slower.
So I think the fact that Alonso was the fastest in practice too was kind of crazy. And you mentioned that you think it was all they're doing their long runs, and that's probably was true. They were all kind of just doing their long runs. And if you look at the times, that probably is pretty consistent with that.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely were, because when you think about it, I mean, qualifying's over. So we're gearing up for the sprint race. So they were like, what tire strategy should we use? And this is like the only time that they had to really get data for today's race. So it was like, okay, long runs is definitely what we saw. So that's why you kind of saw like the drivers jumbled up a little bit. I mean, Verstappen was still P2, for the day, but Alonso being on top was definitely something that you don't typically see. So
it was pretty impressive. And I was like, oh, okay, let's take a note of that,
Alonso for the win.
So then during that we kind of saw the things come out. We saw that Max was going to be fined.
Yes,
$50,000 or 50,000
50,000 euros. You've been yelling at me for saying dollars.
I almost did it.
It's so hard. It is 57. I did the math. $57,000 in US dollars.
So that's what he was charged, and when he explained, from what I heard, it's pretty much his pocket money. Walking around money, his PlayStation money,
it's his FIFA money.
His FIFA money. So he has $50,000 or $57,000 to put on FIFA, and that's pretty good. Good for him. I mean, he is an athlete, professional athlete, and can do what you want to do, right? Yep.
Yeah. So he was fine, because it is in the rules and regulations that you can't touch any of the other cars. But obviously the drama is that it has happened before, and we're all calling for consistency in the sport, I think. So I don't know. Seemed a little steep. Of course, it should be an off-track penalty and not like a grid penalty. He didn't do anything during the race, so to penalize him like for that, it just didn't make sense. But man, I don't have $57,000 just lying around. But
I mean, it's just
crazy.
So that was kind of like just that was
the first.
That was Friday and Saturday where we're getting to know all the things that are happening with that, and so so for Saturday we figure out what Max is going to get. And then shortly after that, before the start of the sprint race, we hear what Lewis is going to get. And Lewis is technically disqualified. And so that means he was disqualified from qualifying. But the fact that he was able to put down runs in practice 1 and 2 that qualified him to be in the race because he put down a fast enough number. So if you don't know what that means, if you don't have a consistent time, so let's say for some reason I get to be in a car. Let's say Haas calls me up and says, hey, Alex, come on out, get in a Haas car, do practice 1. And I get in that car and I don't go very fast because I don't know what I'm doing because I've never driven an F1 car, right?
Only on the game every single day, 500 times a day.
Right.
Okay.
But, so then I don't qualify at all. Let's say there's an engine issue or I just don't go out for qualifying. If I was fast enough, I would be able to qualify for the race based on that run that I did in practice. But since I was so slow, I didn't meet a certain time. And there's always like a certain time in every course. And I think it changes. I don't know. Someone can tell me if it changes based on the runs that that all the other racers are doing.
Okay.
And if you got to make a minimum time based on that for what they're doing through the race, or if it's just like this course is this time. You can only, you have to meet certain time. You have to meet a certain minimum time.
Yeah.
And he was able to do that during his practice, so that qualified him for the race, regardless of his qualifying time, because he was disqualified from qualifying.
Oh my God, so many words.
Blah, blah, blah.
Blah, blah, blah.
Sorry.
But he was disqualified from the sprint race.
He was.
Well, actually, no, he was disqualified from qualifying, which meant that he had to start P20 in the sprint race. So he had no time, so he was in last place. Is essentially what it was. So
he went from first to last. He qualified, in qualifying, he was the fastest. And then with backwards. That, he was back in the back. And so the start of the sprint race.
Well, let's just say, too, I feel like, I don't know what fueled Lewis going into this weekend, but definitely there was a lot of things that could very well have set somebody back if they were in a different mindset. So
I mean, he took that mindset
it just
and
fueled him going into it. He's like, oh my God, I'm just what other option do I have? But if you're looking at social media, it was just the championship's over, everything's done, a lot of negativity. So, we go into the sprint race with man, what's going to happen? I even said to you, I was like, well, he can still get in good position. It's 24 laps. I mean, he still can do something.
You did.
But then it was oh my God, then he's got the 5-place grid drop because of his engine. So it's
and I think that just might have motivated him more. I know he said he forgot about it, but I think he was just so driven with already knowing going into the weekend that he had that because he figured that out Friday, right? Mm-hmm. Even though his press conference on Friday or on Thursday, he didn't say anything, but I'm sure
that's what he did last time.
I know.
So I'm
it's true. So you're right. I mean, him having that mentality going into the weekend with probably that, knowing he's already going to have an automatic 5-place grid penalty. And he was already set in that mindset. Then he got this disqualification, just pissed him off just a little bit more, but in the right way because he used that energy and focused on what he needed to do. Mm-hmm. And, it just proved the whole weekend what he did.
Yeah. So for me, the biggest question that I don't have an answer to from this weekend is, did he give the Speed King award to Max? Because with his disqualification,
the tire,
the Pirelli tire that they get and they sign is not his anymore. So he signed it obviously after qualifying because he was awarded it, but then was disqualified later, which same thing as whatever race it was. Why am I blanking on when he took the last engine penalty and he signed it over to Valtteri? So I'm like, is he going to do the same thing for Max? Yeah. I mean, he needs to, but
yeah, but I think that was that was in the back burner with everything else that was going on.
Oh, I'm sure we had a lot of drama.
We did have a lot of drama. So coming into the sprint race, now we're finally at the start of the sprint race.
Yeah, a lot has happened, okay? That's what we're trying to say. Yeah. So if you weren't following this closely this weekend, you missed a lot. So you got to circle back, full circle, start from the beginning.
So start of the sprint race, Max is up front because of the disqualification, and he doesn't have the best second phase of the start. So there's 2 phases to a start. I feel like I'm telling a whole lot of stuff today. So when you let out a clutch with something that kind of horsepower, you want to let it out halfway. Once you get your traction going and you kind of got some momentum, you can let it out fully. You don't always want to just let the clutch out fully like you would in a normal car.
We've seen that earlier this season with Lewis getting a little wheel spin at the beginning.
Yeah,
but
and that can happen with that much power in a car, you know?
I think the interesting thing about the start of the sprint race was Lewis was on the back end of it, and so he was able to bring up the rear very slowly.
Yeah, during the formation lap, he was very slow, and he took his time, and he had warm tires, the warmest of them all, and of the freshest engine of them all. He was ready to go.
Yeah, so that was interesting just to see, how it affected the people at the front, and he's obviously been on the complete opposite end of that many times. So interesting strategy, but yeah, so that started. Max did have a little bit of a late, rougher start than Valtteri, who was on the opposite end.
So Valtteri took the lead right away, off the first turn.
And Max did say, he came over the radio and was like, whatever. I can't even remember exactly what he said, but was saying that he had issues with the gear shift. So we knew that was, what affected it. But I think he took a little bit wide of a turn on the opening.
Yeah, he did. On turn 2, he was kind of coming wide, and he got kind of set up wrong, and he got
a little squirrely.
He did.
Is what
it
the
was a little
announcers
bit.
would say.
Yeah, he was. The back end kind of did that, and he was kind of running a little wide. And we saw Ferrari have a really, really good start.
Carlos overtook Max on the first lap, which I was like blown away. Like, what?
Yep, it was right away. And well, a couple of laps later.
It was a few laps, but Max easily got past him. I think it was on the pit lane straight.
Ferrari was looking good. But what we noticed right away also was Lewis in the back, right in the straight before turn 1, he had 4 places already passed.
I think he overtook both Haas's and both Williams immediately.
Off the start.
Yeah, so we're like, okay, what's going to happen here? There was a lot of talk about that, and obviously we were following the battle at the top. What's going to happen with Verstappen, because he was within a second for a while, and Perez was trying to fight off Carlos and overtake him. So there was a lot of battling up there, but then it was like, what's going on with Lewis? Where is he at? You just kept watching him climb, and
it was battling everywhere. It was fast paced. It was going quick. The front of the pack kind of was doing its thing, but the focus was really on Lewis. The fact that he was passing someone every single lap, sometimes 2, until he really got behind Ricciardo.
Yeah,
he kind of got stuck behind Ricciardo. That was kind of like midway through the race or so. And that was like 3 laps only. Other than that, it was passing somebody every single lap.
To the last lap. Pretty crazy.
Yeah. And that last lap when Lewis made that pass.
Listen, happy birthday, Lando, but dang. Not a good present for Lewis to give to him.
Honestly, and then we got a quote from Lando, and it's pretty accurate, and it's like, there's a different league. He's in a different league. Lewis was in a different league this weekend. His mindset was elevated. His car was elevated, with the engine. So I think it was just totally, he's the GOAT. And he proved it this weekend for sure. And with the pass like that, I've heard some people say, "Oh, it was nothing. It was minimal." But I think even Lando kind of started his comment with it was.
Well, okay. So the reason people were, it wasn't that it was nothing, but it was like all this controversy about the comments of, "Oh, Lewis was 27 kilometers faster than Lando on that. That's why his car, their straight line speed, whatever." But in reality, Lewis had DRS pretty much the whole race. Used it to his advantage, drove like crazy, was in the slipstream.
Everywhere, oh yeah.
But the Lando pass, you cannot discredit him for this. First of all, it's the last lap. He really, he needed to set himself up for Sunday to be in the best position, obviously with a 5-place grid penalty. Yeah. But you're not going to take stupid risks, too, especially when you're battling for the championship. So, he's coming up, and he's pretty far back. They're both Mercedes-powered cars. So, is he going to be able to gain as quick? Because obviously he struggled with Ricciardo, and he struggled with McLaren in the past. Yeah. So, what's it going to be like? And he just late braked, came in and took over on that turn. And that was like his turn all weekend. Like, he had some fun there. So
Yeah, he did. And he was setting himself up really well. And honestly, like, before he got up there, I didn't think he was going to get that. I didn't think he was going to make it that far up.
yeah.
I thought he was going to get past Alonso, maybe Gasly, and that was probably going to be it. Man, I was wrong. And that Lando pass at the end got him in 5th place, which was 15 places within 24 laps.
Yeah.
Crazy. So that's kind of how it finished. We finished the sprint race with Bottas winning, Verstappen 2nd,
Carlos third.
and Carlos 3rd.
Perez wasn't able to get past him the whole race. He was on the charge, but Carlos was defending really, really good. So
Yep. So Verstappen was able to get 2 more points to his
yeah. So going into Sunday or today, obviously,
Yep.
he was 21 points ahead. So
yeah. So that ended the sprint. That gave Hamilton a 5-place grid penalty that put him in 10th place to start the race today on Sunday. Going into today, overnight, I don't think there was much more controversy. I think they kind of settled it, right? I think it was.
Yeah, no.
Yeah,
it was settled.
Time to move. It was time to move on.
The biggest thing was everybody was like, "Whoa, Lewis!" Like he really. Even Christian was like, "What a race by Lewis! This is nuts! Like he's fast." So
fast.
Same thing with Max. Max was like, we had a good day. Like P2 is good. I'm feeling good with it. But you guys see how fast Mercedes is, and so going into today, everybody was like, it's gonna all be about the start. So, like, what's the start going to look like? And Valtteri, of course, and Max, obviously, same, situation as it was for the sprint race. So, how is it going to take off from the beginning? So,
yeah. So, I guess we can talk about today's race, right? The start of the race.
Yes, of course.
Okay. So, we come around. You like to mention the formation lap sometimes. We saw Lewis kind of do the same thing he did in the sprint race, kind of take his time. Mm-hmm. He didn't really have an issue with staying close to the person in front of him. He set his own pace to get his tires in the same position that he did during the sprint race today during the main race. We had 5 lights go out.
Yes, we did.
We saw Max have a good start. It was much better than it was during the sprint race, and he was alongside Bottas right away.
Mm-hmm.
And
Bottas went wide. So Bottas went wide. He
kind of pushed him, though, a little bit.
It was kind of like exactly what happened in the sprint race, but opposite. So he went out and got a little squirrely. So Perez was able to get ahead of Bottas. So then it was Red Bull 1-2.
It was.
So we were like, all right, oh my God. And, everybody was like, they were pretty close, the first few laps. I would say the biggest thing was, of course, Lewis's P10, and it took him 3 laps to make up 7 places.
Yeah. We also had an issue with Norris because Norris got squeezed by Carlos.
Well, I don't know if he really got squeezed. I think what happened with him was he was behind Carlos, obviously, and
had a really good start.
He had a really good start. Carlos had a bad start, and so he went around him, and then I think he thought he had cleared the car and came over and hit his front end and punctured his tire. So he got a flat tire.
We had a pretty crazy start right there with that. And that pretty much put Lando right to the back of the pack right away. But
Lando was able to nurse the car all the way around and get into the pit lane. So that was good.
And he didn't get lapped.
No, he did not. Which was
impressive. And then during the course of that, we saw the front wing of do you remember who that was?
Oh my God, I feel like first of all, we had 3 safety cars.
We did. And I believe the front wing was
was it Stroll first?
It was.
Yeah, Stroll and Yuki came together on turn 1. And Yuki ended up getting a 10-second penalty, but I don't know. It just seemed super crazy, but Stroll had the advantage going into the corner. Yuki was coming in on the inside, and Stroll just came right in. The whole side of Yuki's car came off. I was like, how is he going to finish this race? I mean, he did, which is impressive, but Yeah, so that happened, which left a ton of debris, obviously,
Everywhere.
on the track, everywhere. So we had a safety car for a good, 5 or 6 laps.
Yeah, they had to go through the pit lane, and you're
Yeah.
like, why are they doing that? And it's just, it keeps that area clear for those guys to come out there and clean it correctly.
Yeah.
And so I think it was about, lap 8.
Yeah,
Lap 7, lap 8. They finally said that it was going to be clear.
Well, the safety car was ending, so Max had control, which
this
happened in Mexico too, right?
It did. And with the way how fast that some of those cars were, he didn't want to get past, so he kind of slowed everybody up all the way to the start line.
Yeah.
And we were off again, and Max had a pretty good start. Sergio still 2 was pretty good.
Yeah.
And then we had
it was Lewis at that point, because remember they interchanged the cars. So we forgot to mention on that, but one of Lewis making up that 7 places, the last place, that he had to get to P3 was Valtteri. So they inverted the cars on turn 1, and Valtteri had to slow down almost to a stop. It looked like when you're looking at it. Of course, it was just really slow. So Lewis was very thankful for that. And then he came on the radio and was like, let's get them,
follow me.
Follow me. Let's go.
Follow me behind them. And so then, we had it was a lot of pit stop or yellow flags right there.
It was. Yeah. So then I think next was Mick. So Mick and Kimmy came together. And I want to say it was the same turn, I feel like.
The first 2 turns are usually, it's turn 1 and then turn 3. Those are high speed, or actually it's turn 1 and turn 4, and those are high speed turns.
We saw a lot at turn 4 too.
Yeah, and you can't go out of bounds on turn 4 because that's where you were.
You can't?
Losing.
They did.
I know. Oh, they did. But during qualifying and all that stuff, that's where you're losing your times.
Yeah, so Kimmy and Mick came together. Mick's front wing ended up underneath his car. It started they thought he was going to be able to make it back in without leaving debris. So it was just a virtual safety car, but then it
kind of broke off.
Yeah, it broke off and pieces were everywhere. So that caused another safety car. So then we had another restart, but it was not a normal.
It was a virtual safety car, so it could end anywhere on the track, not at the normal racing line or the safety car lines. So that kind of just happened right in the middle of the course. I don't know exactly where it happened, but it wasn't the main straight.
Mm-hmm.
And
so that was one safety car. The next one I think happened a little bit later.
Yeah, but so then that was kind of, the front was kind of, they were chasing, they were battling for a little bit. It wasn't really much, and that was kind of leading us up to our first pit stop, and it was really who was going to go first. And we saw Lewis.
I think we're leaving out something.
We're not, because Lewis, before the pit stop, Lewis made the pass.
Okay, thank you.
On Sergio.
I was worried that you were going to forget about that.
I didn't. I'm sorry. The Sergio Perez battle was pretty.
It was crazy. Okay, first of all, it was Red Bull was super fast in the middle, as expected.
Yep.
Twisty turny. And Mercedes was super fast on the straights. So it was Lewis would gain ground, then he would lose almost 3/10, because they talk about it later when he's, challenging and, on the charge with Max. And then it would be on the straight, they'd come back. And so then he'd be within, half a second or, 600ths or whatever. And so we're okay, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? He kept getting closer and closer. And then there was the first, so Lewis finally is able to get past Perez.
Yeah, it was turn 1. He was straightaway 1, which is the longest straight on the in Brazil. And he was able to make the pass. Really nice. Really fast.
Yeah, for a hot second.
But yeah, then coming around.
And Perez is just kidding, I got DRS. See ya.
The second DRS zone, he dumped his battery, had to have.
Yeah.
And really just gave it everything he could to get around that next turn, which was turn 4, and got back in front of Lewis, but definitely was without a lot of energy, because whatever he did, he dumped that whole battery. And he was trying to recoup.
But it was pretty cool.
It was. He was trying to recoup that energy back through that lap. Once they got back around to for the next lap on that straightaway, Lewis set himself up. Mm-hmm. I don't think it was that turn. I think it was turn 4.
Yeah.
Coming out of 3, going into that straightaway in the second DRS.
Yeah.
He was able to
get past him.
And Perez did everything he could. That one lap, man, was pretty cool to see the battle.
The crowd went crazy when Lewis passed him, and then it was like 2 seconds later, like JK, and then Perez got past him, and the crowd went crazy.
Yeah,
I was like, oh my god. So when we say it was a good race, I mean that was just the start of it because oh my god, the next battle was
So then all right, so now I can talk about the pit stops. So really, there was some talk, some chatter, and then Lewis got within 3 seconds.
Yeah.
He was like 3.2.
By the time he got past Perez, Max was like pretty far ahead, and Perez had even ask Max to give me DRS, and I was like, why is he gonna? I mean, like that's great teamwork or whatever, but Max is battling for the championship, so I had a feeling he was not gonna,
slow down
and help that out.
Yeah,
so
unfortunately.
So he was pretty far out. So Lewis was trying to chip away, to get closer, obviously, to pull the undercut. But I don't think he got close. He didn't get close enough. But he came in first.
He did. He came in first. Tried to do the undercut. Came out. Not a little bit of traffic, but was able to keep it moving. And then next lap, Max came right in.
Yeah.
Didn't want to do that. But when Max came out, that 3-second gap came down to about a second and a half, somewhere like 2 seconds. But he was able to chip it down a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't like a dramatic overtake.
No.
Just was able to chip away. And honestly, starting 10th, that's all. Lewis was always going to be having to chase it down.
Mm-hmm.
There was the undertake was just going to get him a little bit closer. So that kind of set us up into the second stint.
I think Perez pitted maybe 2 laps later.
Yeah, it wasn't too much longer. It was pretty much like that. Too much, yeah.
Yeah.
And then we got on radio and we heard Max say he doesn't want to be undercut again.
Yeah.
Because
don't mess with him.
Don't mess with him. He wants to be the first one to make the move. And
so we were interested, what's going to happen. We knew it was going to be a 2-stop strategy pretty much from the beginning based on how hot it was. Everybody started on mediums and they went on the hards.
Remember Bottas was out there they kept him out and he was back in the lead.
Yes.
And then they pitted him for his first stop, but when he came back out, he was mad.
No, he was mad the second stop.
Was it the second stop?
Yeah, of course it was.
That was the first stop. He was still trying to say
he had the smallest stint in between the two, pit stops or whatever, but he was mad about the second one. So, but
he thought that they could go
do
one stop.
Yeah. It's funny because remember earlier this season when he was like, I told you it was going to be a 2-stopper. So now he's like, I told you it was going to be a 1-stopper.
Well, sometimes the drivers have the best feel.
But who knows, honestly.
But, he doesn't have the computer in front of him seeing tire degradation and anything.
I mean, Lewis was unhappy with his second pit stop too. So interesting. But anyway, so they all pit. They're, doing their thing. The thing about Valtteri's pit stop is they waited. So he was the last one out of the top 4 to come in. He lucked out with the third safety car. So Stroll's strolling on down that pit straight, and all of a sudden some things break off his car and go flying in the air. So we need another safety car. I'm like, we have not had safety cars in a minute, and we had extra safety cars today. But, kept it interesting. So Valtteri was able to come in, work it to his advantage.
Yeah, he had
got his pit stop.
Yep, it worked out for him, and it worked out for
came back out and was in front of Perez.
Was. And I think it also worked out for Lando as well. He was able to pit then, too.
Yeah, so Lando had to pit after, obviously, lap 1. So, he was on the charge, which doing a pretty mighty job. And then he came in during the safety car, too. So
yeah, I mean, he went, from lap 1, he was in the back of the field. So,
yeah,
those safety cars and the virtual safety cars also helped him out, too, because it was able to get him back up to where he was. And he finished in the points, which was really all they can ask for, considering Ricardo
had to
retire. And I don't exactly know why. I know they mentioned it, but I don't know if I heard.
Engine pressure failure, I think.
Okay.
So, and I don't think he's taken another engine yet. I don't think so. I'm sure we can expect that probably from the next race.
Yeah,
but
probably.
Yeah, so pit stop round number 1 is done. So we're back out on the track. I don't even know where we're at, lap 20 something.
Yeah, so that kind of took us to, and there was no battling going on in the front there. It was kind of more showing the midfield, the back of the pack.
Yeah.
Because there was a lot of action going on throughout the whole thing. I saw Yuki Tsunoda making moves, and then because he also had the issue and he had different tire strategy because he had to get new tires too.
Well, yeah, and for him, his race was pretty much over once he got hit.
There was a
like
lot of moves back there, and I thought even Schumacher and all them were going to do better too. I thought they were higher up, and
yeah,
they didn't quite make it as far, So
Mazepin finished ahead of Mick.
I know, wow.
Yeah. So, all right, let's get to it.
All right, so Max pits first for the second.
Yeah, he was not getting undercut. Okay,
no,
so he came in.
He was the first one to make the pit stop, and then
Perez was next.
Yep. And then Lewis was like, "I want
so basically
the same tires." He was kind of coding.
That happened before Max came in, and
but I think you think it triggered.
I was like, "What the hell?" With the whole okay, so if you were gonna pit. Which tires do you want, Lewis? And then I don't even know. I can never really understand because they're racing and whatever, so it's hard to understand unless they have the wording. But he said something in code about what kind of tires he wanted. Next lap, Max came in, and got his tires.
And he
went back on the
hards.
Yeah, went on the hards. Then Perez came in shortly after. Lewis stayed out, and then I would say it was it was 3 laps difference because that was the big deal.
Yep.
Him coming in. And it was 18 seconds with distance. So we knew he was going to come out behind Max because obviously a pit stop, 21 seconds. So he came in, he's on the hards, and he's not happy. He wanted to be on the mediums, so he came on the radio, and Bono was
But do you think that was strategy too?
I don't know. I feel like everything is really hard. Everyone's so cryptic. No one wants to show their cards.
But so his engineer came back and said, "Look, we're seeing tire degradation greater than what you are feeling. The mediums probably weren't going to make it to the end to give you the life that you needed at the end. But honestly, with what happened, he probably could have done it on the mediums too. Who knows? He finished, 4 seconds?
10.5 seconds.
10.5 seconds? I don't think the tires... Yeah.
I don't know.
So, new set of tires came on. Lewis's, were 3 laps newer, and he was a little angry. So
he's going before he had pitted. Bottas had pitted before because they pulled him earlier than Max than Lewis. Sorry. So he was the third to come in out of the top 4, and that's when he was like, "I think we made a mistake. We could have had an easy one." But
as soon as he said that, he was right at a second behind Max.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh man, he's gonna get in DRS zone," and then he was in DRS zone, and it was just battling from there on for a few minutes. And lap 47.
You're talking about Lewis. I was talking about Bottas, but yes.
Sorry.
I'm like, yes, we'll get to that obviously now. So Lewis, was on the charge. He caught up to him.
Yeah.
And it was a mighty battle for a long time. He was within a second. I mean, it went on for a while. Then we get to lap 47. And things are getting good.
Yeah, so Lewis sets himself up. He's within a second, gets DRS. We all know Mercedes is faster in the straight. And made a really good attempt around turn 1.
Mm-hmm. Didn't get past him, but was right behind him. I think it was 0.3, 0.2, right there, right behind him. And when you come around turn 1, it's 2 and 3 right away. And when you come out of 3, you get the DRS again to turn 4, and turn 4 is a high-speed turn. And we saw Lewis. This is lap 48 now.
Yeah, coming on to lap 48, we saw Lewis come out on the side, make the pass, and then they started that turn. But what we saw next was both of them run out. No one made the apex.
So I was like, oh, my God, the sprint race curse. Because Max has never finished a sprint race weekend Grand Prix. And then we know what happened at the races. So obviously Silverstone and then Monza, they ended up on top of each other. And so I literally was sitting on the edge of the couch like, this is it. They're going to hit each other. I already know it. And was like, that's, when we say we're stressed, I can only imagine their feelings too. But so going into the corner, that corner, Lewis is coming around the outside, has like the advantage, and then Max comes back, and then he's like in front, but then they all of a sudden go wide, but don't hit each other. Very close. But
yeah, so I'm going to say this. I think Max ran him out wide, and that was just a little, dirty racing. I guess he knows that he could probably do it once or twice before he gets flagged or whatever. The stewards noted the incident.
Yes.
So that means they took a look at it. We didn't get to see Max's steering. We got to see Lewis's steering, and we see Lewis has a full lock, I noticed, and then he slowly brings it back. Excuse me. But he still kept it on pretty good, but they were definitely running wide. I would tell you that battle caused them both to brake late.
Oh, yeah.
They missed their braking points, both of them. And they were trying to get in front of each other, and it was a battle, and they both ran wide. And that's why the stewards didn't do anything other than take a note.
Yeah. They were racing hard.
They were.
The thing that has come up a lot as the controversy is like, what's the difference between that and also Austria when Perez got the penalties for running, I think is Leclerc wide.
It was Leclerc.
And it wasn't even as bad, I don't think. I mean, Max and Lewis went off the track pretty significantly. Luckily, neither one of them lost control because, I mean, Max was, obviously not as bad. Lewis was wider, but Lewis had to go through like the dirt and stuff to re-enter the track. So, I mean, they were pretty deep, but they recovered from it, and so it was noted.
Noted. So that kept Max in front for at least another lap.
Yeah. It's crazy, honestly. You gotta watch it, but
yeah. This is one of the best races during one of the best seasons. I kind of feel like I've said that a couple of times this year, but this season is so good because there's so many races that are just battled, and we're getting so close to the end here that this was just the and we were at the perfect conditions. We had a great overtaking track. We had Lewis driven beyond all belief with a fresh engine or part of a fresh engine. He didn't take a whole engine thing. It was just a 5-place grid engine penalty.
It was crazy, but anyways.
Crazy. So next lap 49.
It was the third time that Lewis tried to get by, and the third time was the charm.
We saw
Max get flagged, black and white flags for weaving.
So during that next lap, right after 47, so 48 going into 49, we saw him come around on the straight, and we saw him doing a little bit of weaving back and forth. Now, I know you're allowed to do a little bit of it, a little bit of leeway, because they don't want you, but what we saw him do again was a little extreme. It was definitely not only noted, he was definitely later black flag, but what are you going to do? He's not going to do it again. He knew he could get away with it again once. So he was trying everything he could.
Well, once again, they're fighting for the championship, so he's not going to be like, hey, Lewis, here you go.
Yeah, he wasn't.
So definitely not. So as expected, it was tough, but I mean, it is what it is. Lewis ended up getting past him, and
so we saw real good battle there.
Yeah.
Real good battle. And
real good racing, a lot of fun, craziness. All while that's happening, because I was like, when did Stroll retire? When did Ricardo retire? Because it just was so intense at the front, you just we couldn't cover anything else.
No, every time they showed Stroll retiring, and I'm like, who cares?
We got strolled again.
Yeah, we did. Who cares? We're in the middle of a battle here.
For me, I was like, okay, so when Lewis overtook Max, I feel like that's when it like cut to something else, and I was like, Max could have overtaken Lewis again. Why are we not watching them?
We got strolled again.
He's gonna have DRS.
You know what? I think that's the broadcasters are playing our trick on us.
Oh my God!
Strolled again.
Got strolled again.
Yeah. That happened 49, 50, lap 50, and Lewis just started pulling away, and that was really the race. After that. Lewis brought it home.
Yeah, and Lewis had fastest lap at that point, and so, it was like, okay, what's going to happen? Valtteri was trying to catch Max for the team. He was catching him, and I don't know if it was just Max was like, whatever at this point type of thing.
I think he was just, keeping the tires, and he knew that this was probably the best position he was going to get with the engine that...
Right, like, I'm not going to risk it. So he ended up 10.5 seconds back at the finish. Bottas did catch up a little bit, but they weren't going to gamble on pitting him to lose P3. So the announcers were like, okay, Perez is going to come in. They're going to bring him in to take that 1 point away from Lewis. So it happened, and Perez ended up nicking fastest lap.
So that's kind of how it went. Hamilton from 25 places over the weekend.
25 place grid penalties throughout the weekend.
And first, I said if he would have not got disqualified from the qualifying, he would have been in first for the sprint. He would have finished first. He would have then got his 5-place grid penalty, which would have put him 6th. He would have then started that race.
Max would have still held him up for a while, though.
Yeah, but it would have been way earlier on.
Yeah.
And then it would have been over, and I think he would have lapped everybody.
My God. I don't know. Who knows?
I don't know.
Coulda, shoulda, woulda. All we know is Lewis qualified first, got a penalty, started P20 in the sprint race, finished P5, started the the regular race with a 5-place grid penalty, started P10, finished P1. What a weekend. Yeah. Driver of the day, hands freaking
Driver of
down.
the weekend.
Driver of the weekend, yes.
Yeah.
I know. I gave him an honorary driver of the day yesterday. Really not thinking, he was going to pull out the win today, but, he was on fire.
Yeah, I'm just going to say one thing. He's roughly the same age as me, and what he's doing, the ability that he has, he's just the top of his game right now. Absolutely killing it. I tell her all the time, I want to see somebody else win the championship. I'm not a Lewis hater. I'm a Lewis fan. I do want to see somebody else win the championship in this era because I know that next year the cars are completely different. The whole entire thing can be different. Lewis can go on and win as many as he wants. I'm loving the battle. I know it's coming down now.
It's 14 points, so it's a little bit closer now.
A little bit closer.
So we're going to Qatar, a new track.
Yeah.
We've never raced. Actually, the next two we've never raced on before.
Yeah, so this is next week is right around the corner. That's the end of the triple header.
We're just hoping that their materials get there because we're not in the same area really. And some teams didn't get their stuff until Friday or Thursday.
Yeah, so DHL is going to have to figure that one out.
Yeah, they're going to have to be a little bit quicker, okay? Because we don't want any delays. But yeah, I think as of right now, so obviously we went in with the Constructors Cup. There was the 1 point Mercedes advantage. I think it's 11 points now. So there's still a lot can happen. There's 3 races left, which doesn't sound like a lot, but when you think about the amount of points that are up for grabs, it is mathematically impossible for anybody else to win the World Drivers' Championship other than Max or Lewis at this point. It's 14 points.
Yeah.
Now the talk is if Lewis wins the next 2 and Max takes P2 and neither one of them gets fastest lap, they'll be tied going into Abu Dhabi. So talk about anxiety. It's what we all want to see, but it's going to be a nail biter.
Yeah.
But that's just 2021 F1 and
also Alpine and Alpha Tauri are still tied in the Constructor Cup.
Yeah.
Which is pretty crazy.
They went in 106 and now they're 112 each, so crazy. But Alpine does have the advantage because Esteban won the race.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Technically.
So we still got a lot of things happening.
Ferrari did extend their gap, so good day for Ferrari.
Bad day for McLaren.
Bad day for McLaren.
Yeah.
But
and McLaren, at least Lando, like I said earlier in the podcast, that he did end up in the points. He did finish 10th. Yeah. And a good drive from him, actually, with what happened in the first lap.
I know.
So he did good. He was, he did good. Too bad for Ricardo.
I know.
But yeah, so that's my team. They, they're sitting 4th, but I think they can still beat Ferrari. They got to figure out a couple things. What else do you want to say? This is kind of summed up. Again, this was the longest podcast we've done.
The only thing that we want, I guess the only other thing is when the race ended, of course, naturally being so, there's been so much controversy this weekend. Lewis was called to the steward's office. The principal's office.
That's because
he unbuckled his seatbelt to get the Brazilian flag so he could do his victory lap and, represent.
In the car, you can't.
I know.
You have to do this. You need the seatbelt to be off.
Well, you know what? So anyways, he got called, and so now he was fined a €5,000 penalty, and then he's got 20,000 into the 2022 season. So
yeah, so the total of a €25.
25,000 euro, yeah. Crazy.
Yeah. So that kind of made this weekend all crazy. That summed it up. Man, penalties, good driving.
Lots of overtaking.
This was one of the top ones.
Great fans. I'm like, the fans were charging.
they rushed the track at the end.
They were ready to go.
And I don't know if they were technically supposed to do that, but they did it anyway, and good for you guys. I'd do it too. That's got jealousy. Dream. I would love to do that. Yeah, so that kind of sums it up. We'll see you in 1 week.
For the final of the final triple header.
Yes.
The final of the final triple header.
So obviously, if you made it this far, thank you. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. If you could just subscribe again, that would be great. Nice. We'll talk to you in 1 week. All right. We'll see you later.